And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 74th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for Indiana University sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are this edition of the Hoosier Sound on February 5th, 2019, where I am your host, Noah Freeman. Here with me tonight are my usual co-hosts, Matthew Lickens and Nathan Krishnan.
What's up, guys?
If you want to see us live and participate in the ongoing chat, catch us Tuesday evenings at 8:30 p.m. or on our YouTube page or our website. If you miss us for the live broadcast, you can subscribe to our show for free on whatever platform you listen to podcasts, so you can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at The Hoosier Sound and at Indiana HQ and subscribe. All of the information is in our website, indianahq.com. All right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. On the docket tonight, we are going to reminisce and bask in the victory that was the Indiana Hoosiers win last Saturday against number 6 Michigan State. And then after that, we're going to preview Iowa. But it's going to be a more positive podcast tonight because the past month has been nothing but losses. And even when you have it's been more a month and a half since we've really talked positively about this Hoosier team, because even that Iowa win was not Illinois, sorry, the Illinois win was, it wasn't something to write home about. So we haven't really talked about some more positive stuff in a very long time. So MSU, Iowa, first, of course, everyone knows about it. The world knows about it. A couple days ago, Indiana, battered and bruised, walked into East Lansing to face number 6 Michigan State. They had lost 21 of the previous 22 games in East Lansing. They only won one game since 1993. That game was in 2013, but that's it. They come in, Juwan Morgan gets injured 14 minutes into the game. They have to play over 30 minutes without Juwan. Al Durham gets injured again. Just despite literally all of the odds, Indiana ends up winning in overtime, 79-75. So just pure, even though we've had multiple days to just comprehend this. Nathan, let's start with you. What are just your knee-jerk reactions to this caliber of a win that Indiana got?
How awesome was that? And hello, everyone. Thanks for listening and tuning in wherever you are. But what a win. I mean, it's one thing to upset a team. I mean, going into the game, it wasn't like some sort of unrealistic fantasy that IU was going to go into East Lansing and win. But the way it happened is still something I'm still trying to process. The fact that, okay, they got a couple of guys back, and Devontae Green and Deron Davis is one thing. But as you mentioned, during the game, Juwan Morgan got hurt. Our starting point guard, Robert Finney, scored 0 points and was plagued with foul trouble the whole time. And it's things like this where I looked and I went, man, how are they able to pull it off? Even Al Durham, talk about another guard. He suffered a hand injury late in regulation. He came back and found a way to help the team. This is why we love sports. I mean, there is no script that you could write in Hollywood like this where people would look at you and say, oh, yeah, this will work. No, they'll say, no, this is unbelievable. This is ridiculous. This is crazy. Except it happened. IU went into that hostile atmosphere and found a way to come out with the win. Now, what did we say? What have we said over the course of the season? One thing I always like to say is it's never as bad as you think it is, and it's never as good as you think it is. So now IU's got to shift their focus to a couple of big games coming up this week.
Exactly, and especially with your "it's never as bad, it's never as good as it is." I think Marquette was kind of the high. The losing streak was kind of the low. So now we need to balance it out, get some of those wins. And as Archie mentioned in his the interview stuff that he does last night and over the past couple of days, he said he's told the team, look at it as before Saturday, it's now just another 10-game conference schedule, 10 wins or just 10 games. Got one of them. They're 1-0 in the last 10 games of conference play, and that's just how they're looking at it, which I think is a great way to look at it. But Matt, your turn next. What, just your reactions?
Somebody asked me what our chances were of us beating Michigan State on what was it, Saturday? what our chances were of beating Michigan State, and I said you have a better chance of stepping on the moon than we have of beating Michigan State. And I have never been more proud to look like a bumbling idiot in my life. So thank you, IU Sports, for proving me wrong yet again. I immediately after the win, I was like, I'm not sure if this is replicable. Like, I'm not sure that this performance can be done, like, again, this season, like, alone ever for this team. But the more and more I thought about it, and the more, the points that Nathan brought up, which was we were out without Juwan Morgan for 34 minutes of the game. We were basically without Rob Finney, right? We had him on defense, but on offense, he was cold. He didn't play at all. He didn't play close to the level that he should have. Not at all. Not the close to the level that he should have. And fouled out. And our third best player was Deron Davis. If you had told me that we would go into Michigan State and win without Juwan for 34 minutes of the game, and Deron Davis is our third best player, I'd be beyond confused and ask you what drugs you're having because I want them. But no, seriously, like, I was like, this is not replicable. There's no way. There's absolutely no way. And the more I thought about it, I was like, well, Deron, when he's healthy, has shown that he's actually a very good player on this team. And when Devontae and Deron play, we only lost one game. And that game was at Duke. And we got steamrolled out, and we were basically without Juwan and Romeo for the first half. So, just might as well we're just like throwing water out of the boat. At that point, this team has grown in front of our eyes. That 7-game losing streak, there was little hints here or there that we would be able to get a win eventually. I don't think anybody would ever peg Michigan State as that win we were going to get to break the streak. But it's over, and now you got to look to Thursday and go, well, you have a ranked Iowa team coming to town. We're feeling good about ourselves. What if we beat this Iowa team? That's 2 ranked wins in a row for a team that just lost 7 in a row. And then we play Ohio State this weekend. And then we beat Ohio State. We got 3 wins in a row, 3 against very good teams. I don't even care if Ohio State's been stumbling. There we are a top 15 team earlier this year. That team is still in Ohio State, the same team that, was ranked 15th in the country. Went to Cincinnati and beat a very good Cincinnati team to start the season. We can get back into the tournament. Not only can we make it back into the tournament, but if we only lose 2 games the rest of the year, I honestly think we can get back to the 4, 5, 6 seed line where we were at the beginning of the season before we got the 7-game losing streak. So we could basically just wipe the 7-game losing streak off our record almost entirely. And I'm also glad, one more point. This is my memorable monologue, by the way, guys. I'm just going to add that in since I've been talking for about 9 years. But one last thing is that I think we got to our lowest at the perfect time. Like, if you had to ask me at what time this year would you rather us be at our worst, I think I would have told you January. Because it didn't matter. We were going to lose half those games anyways, just because they're tough games. You don't go into Mackey and win. It's a very hard game, especially against that Purdue team. You don't go to Michigan State and win. Went to Michigan State and won, and you don't go to Michigan and win either. And the Michigan game at home was going to be a tough one anyways, even if we had a really good team. But, we were at our worst, and now we can build back up again. Hopefully everybody gets healthy. We add more new pieces like Race Thompson, who's basically a new piece as he hasn't played. And let's see what the team does from here, because I'm excited. I really am.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't necessarily want to get too ahead of ourselves with winning necessarily just Thursday and Sunday, but yes, I know what you mean. And just the confidence level of switch, which is something I wanted to just dive into briefly, because the Marquette and the Louisville wins and even the Butler wins weren't necessarily flukes for this team, when a lot of people just look at, oh, they just had a great beginning of the season. Now they're just completely done. I think first, to go into that 7-game losing streak, a lot of it, there's more than one thing. There are multiple things that have to go into that kind of a losing streak. But I think one of the biggest things, and when everyone was just trying to find answers, it was hard to find answers. But I think now, just looking at it, you can at least see hindsight's 2020. But one of the biggest things I think really was just confidence, and everyone talked about that. And it's hard to really quantify that. But going back to Marquette, they were confident in that game. They still had some of the talent. They were able to shoot. They were able to make some things. And sure, you might think it's a fluke, but I don't think the win was a fluke. Maybe the margin of victory was a fluke, but they were just confident. They were able to beat a really, really good Marquette team that's now ranked 10th in the nation. They were able to beat Louisville, who's now climbing up the rankings too and almost close to the top 10. So my point is at least that they're getting confidence back. Well, I hope they at least have all their confidence back, and they just now need to kind of, like we said last week, we said hit the reset button on Tuesday. I think we should have said hit the reset button on Thursday, just so then after the Rutgers game and after that entire loss. But they hit the reset button. They restarted, got to win at Michigan State. I think you kind of have to hit the reset button again, just to kind of, you don't want to bask, if you're on the team, you don't want to really think about the victory too much. You want to just refocus, say, hey, we can do this again, and then just think back, which Archie's probably done a great job of doing. They probably celebrated Saturday night, and then once they got off the bus, talked to the fans, they talked to Matt, and they're just like, all right, it's game mode time again. But let's dive into some of the more the basketball, the meat and potatoes of all this kind of stuff. And of course, I think you can argue that Justin Smith might be the player of the game, but I think the almost overwhelming majority of, if you ask fans that saw the game, would think that it was De'Ron Davis that was able to just come out off of an injury, off of multiple injuries and everything. And I want to ask you guys this, because I didn't find first, De'Ron, of course, hasn't really played as a Hoosier. He was able to play as a freshman, but I mean, he's a freshman. Yeah, he was an older freshman, but he was still a freshman. His sophomore year, he only had half the season before he was gone. So really, if you think about it, which he also hasn't really been around this season either, because, yeah, he's been in, actually, technically, he's logged minutes in games, but he's logged a very short amount of minutes. So really, when you think about it, he's still technically under Al Durham and Justin Smith in terms of, like, playing time and being able to see the court. He's still basically a mid-year sophomore in terms of being able to see the court, just by how much he's missed. And obviously, it's really hard to think about that because he's a lot older. He came into college just a little older and everything. But still, if I were to ask you guys the Saturday game, what ranked in De'Ron's minutes-wise, how much he played, do you think that would be more the top of how many minutes he's played, period, or like maybe more mid-level of how much minutes he's played? Matt, what do you think?
I think it's gonna be top. I don't see him playing any more minutes than he did against Michigan State. I think the reason we had him in so much is because Michigan State's a big team. We're a small team. We really needed him to play.
Yeah.
And that was like the perfect game for him. There's going to be some games this year where he's not going to be able to play like that, especially against smaller teams who can't move as well. But when he goes on big against big, he's shown that he can play with the best players in the country in that position when he's healthy. Yeah,
and my point more was that that's his second most minutes that he's ever logged as a Hoosier before the injury too. That's the second most minutes he's ever logged. So first, just coming off the injury, not being able to be basically court ready. You could tell even Archie said for about 12 or 13 of those 25 minutes, he was just absolutely gassed, but he gave it his all. He hasn't played that many minutes since mid-November of 2017. It's been close. It's a year and just under a year and a half before he's been able to play that many minutes. But Nathan, what were your thoughts, just kind of diving a little deeper into De'Ron's play last Saturday?
Yeah, and I have a nugget that I came across earlier today that I thought I'm going to save this for the podcast. So how about this? Al Durham, right? Al Durham, we all know who he is. We all know that Durham's a reliable role player on this team. He's a sophomore. This is his second season. Al Durham in his career at IU has played, I believe, it's 52 games. De'Ron Davis, he's a junior. It's his third season at IU. He's played in 66 games. However, to your point about the minutes, Al Durham has played 200 more minutes at IU than Deron Davis has. So it's not just a matter of, Deron Davis is suiting up for these games. Like you said, he's not been a 35-minute per game guy. But wow, on Saturday when Archie Miller called his number, whether it was due to just adding depth or because of the injury that Juwan Morgan suffered, he was really good. And Deron, it's not shocking because we've seen him play well in the time he's been on the court. In fact, I remember last year against Duke in the game that was in Bloomington, he was giving guys like Marvin Bagley and Wendell Carter fits inside. And I think that might even be the game that we all remember when we think about Deron Davis. But on Saturday, it's not simply a fact that he was getting, that he put up 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists. He was going up against one of the tougher front courts in the Big Ten. I mean, this isn't Georgia Southern, not to pick on them, but it's not like it's a non-conference cupcake that's 320th in KenPom. This is a front court that had Nick Ward and Xavier Tillman and Kenny Goins, who had an unbelievable game for Michigan State, yet nobody's talking about it because guys like Deron Davis, and I'll include Justin Smith in this, both guys played really well. Going forward, I've got to think Archie Miller calls on Davis because depth in the Big Ten is such a big deal. And we'll see that in IU's next opponent, Iowa. Every team in the conference plays multiple guys off their bench. And they need to, because that's the only way you can survive the grind that is the Big Ten. It's unbelievable how all 14 teams are in the top 100 right now in the KenPom ratings. And the top 13 teams, excluding Rutgers, are in the top 75 or so, maybe 7 when this is. In order to survive that, you have to rely on bench players. And seeing Deron Davis out there using his repertoire of post moves, going up against Ward and Tillman, and battling inside on both ends of the floor, it was inspiring. It was awesome. And I think is going to have to rely on that going forward.
I loved first. It's also funny. It's weird to think like when Tom Crean recruited Deron, I don't think he was envisioning Deron just being able to come off the bench. He was supposed to be that starter and that long-term starter, maybe not 4 years, but at least 3 or 2.5 year starter. And just all the injuries has put him on the bench. And now he's a pivotal bench player, which is a little strange to think about it. But I loved your little nugget about the Al Durham has played 200 more minutes than Deron, and Deron's an entire class above Al. And it's just, man, he just hasn't been able to see the court, which is just a shame for him because he's such a nice guy. Like I've said on here, I've gotten to talk to him actually a couple times. When I was at the Maryland game, he was one of the only players left on the court. We just had a conversation for a couple minutes, and he's just a really nice guy. He's got a really great attitude, and you could also tell his floor leadership was just something different that we haven't seen in this team in a long time. At the beginning of the year, we all mentioned, and a lot of people saw it. I don't remember which specific game, but it was at the beginning of the season, how someone just had a hard foul on Romeo and just hit him and knocked him to the ground. And the first thing Deron did was he literally rushed over, got in the guy's face and said, "You're not going to do that to my guy," kind of thing. And just not only that kind of leadership, he was also just bringing energy, talking to the players on the court and just facilitating stuff. And I tweeted this out, and I just think, for the first, we don't have to get into the part of people just being worried about next year, but I think getting excited, and a lot of people have talked about reasons to be more excited about next year than even this year. That's another reason to get excited, because Deron, I think, is ready to, and he really wants to take that next step, not just on the floor, but as a leader, and trying to make sure that this team can stay together just with all of his great attitude. But you alluded to this just a little bit, Nathan. Justin Smith had himself a game, of course. If there were some ups and downs, and some of the more downs were, of course, it's kind of Justin Smith, how we've gotten to know him, where he's going to make some bad shots. When he gets the ball, sometimes it's not the best. When he gets the ball, sometimes, though, it's actually pretty good. Kind of like Devontae. You got some good and bad Justin when he has the ball in his hand and he needs to make a move from 4 or 5 feet outside of the basket. But overall, it was incredibly good, including that just tip shot to basically almost seal the game for IU. But Matt, give me your thoughts on just Justin's performance and dive into the numbers a little bit.
So Justin Smith, I think everybody, not everybody, I think a majority of IU fans would agree that he's probably our best defender on this team. Outside of maybe a couple people would say Al Durham or Rob Finney, depending. But Justin Smith is our best defender, and I think he showed that perfectly against Michigan State. He was all over the floor, causing chaos with his athleticism and his length. I mean, case in point, that last block, it was a block on Cassius Winston when he goes up for that beautiful runner of a layup, and Justin just tips it with like the tippy tips of his fingertips just to get enough of it to alter the shot so that Duran can get the rebound, and then Duran Davis, our clutch free throw shooter, as we all know, that our clutch free throw shooter sinks both the shots. But no, I mean, Justin, who was he matched up against during the game? Because I'm pretty sure he was one of the lowest scoring people during the game. I want to say it was Aaron Henry, but I could be wrong. But I think Aaron Henry only had like 4 or 5 points. And he did that earlier the year against Iggy Brastakis at Michigan. The guy who's averaging like 16, 17 points per game. Justin Smith gets matched up on him. He's got like 4 or 5 points. I think he had 6. I'm wrong. He had like 6 points for that game. So, I mean, Justin's our best defender. And then offensively, he was attacking the rim. We know he can't shoot the three as well as we would like. He can shoot it if he has confidence. But he was actually getting to the rim, and if he wasn't making the shot, he was getting the rebound and then putting it back in, which is almost as good, except for the fact that it would be nice for him to make a contested layup every once in a while. But he will work on that, I am sure. Also, his rebounding. He helped us out-rebound Michigan State, a team that prides itself on beating everybody in the rebounding game. We out-rebounded them with Duran Davis, Juwan Morgan, Justin Smith, and Al Durham and Devontae Green pitched in. I mean, it was a team effort, really, but I think Justin Smith was at the center of, 2 guys go for the rebound. He's that third guy from IU who goes in and maybe tips the ball out away from the 2 guys going up for the rebound. That happened multiple times just because his length and his athleticism. When he becomes comfortable in his skin and is confident, he is a remarkably different player.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what I wanted to talk about with Justin is he had 5 offensive rebounds, which is something that is incredible. It was more than Goins or Ward, which is, and his total rebounds too were combined was much more than not much more, but it was he had the most rebounds out of both teams, like a single player on both teams, and it's not necessarily the best comparison, but I think his role in the offense, it's starting to be more like maybe Freddie's was last year. It's where he's a guy that's kind of bang down low, get a lot of rebounds. He's not necessarily going to score too much. He's going to try and score around 2 or 3 feet around the basket. And he's starting to grow into his role very well. He's not going to get the ball, or at least he usually doesn't get the ball literally even 4 feet behind, past the basket. And like you said, Matt, his defense has just been incredible. Someone asked Archie on his show, the Holiday Inn, whichever hotel last night, his show, someone asked if that was Justin's best defensive game, and without basically saying yes, Archie was more or less walking around that was, if that wasn't Justin's best game, it had to be one of his best games. And especially when you think about Justin going up against, you talked about Henry. I think he also matched up against Tillman a couple of times, which Tillman had some more shots than I guess he normally does. But Justin, the point was Justin was just going up against people that are bigger than him, and he's still going up to their level with their physicality. And like I said earlier, he still has a couple faults, but if he even has 80-90% of the effort in the kind of play that he did against Michigan State, he's definitely got a spot. He's finding his role and it's starting to become really great. So let's move on to a couple other players, because those are the 2 outstanding players. But this game was great because we don't have to talk about one or two players because they were the only ones contributing. It was a game that you saw something from almost every single person that stepped on the court. Even you go all the way down to Jake Forrester, brought energy and fouled out in 8 minutes. Archie joked last night in that same show that it was like, I think Jake's going on just a world-breaking record of fouls per minute, basically, and he's not wrong either. But Nathan, you got someone like Romeo, which we can actually dive into a little bit, but you got Romeo, you got Durham, you got even Fitzner or Anderson, but just Devontae. Which guy did you like a lot of their play from? Which guy did you think contributed in a really positive way last Saturday?
Yeah, choice for that is going to be Devontae Green. To me, he made such an impact on the court from start to finish. Again, he was coming off a suspension, and IU really didn't disclose the details. But a lot of people,
as they should. Not disclose it. That was very well done by Archie and the basketball staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, now the thing there is, this is a guy, he's a junior, okay? He's not from the state. He's got a brother that's in the NBA. Instead of whining and pouting and packing it in after the suspension, it looks like Devontae Green took that as an opportunity to maybe step away from basketball for a few days and refocus, because wow, he made an incredible impact against Michigan State on Saturday. Devontae Green's played, I think, something like 70 games at IU. I'm not sure if he's played a game better. 11 points, 5 assists. He had a steal and even a block. And I know he committed a turnover at the end there that we were all pulling whatever hair we had left out. But at the end of the day, this is a guy who had who knew what to expect from Devontae Green going into this game. I had no idea. I don't know if we were going to see him at all. I don't know if we were going to see him for 20 minutes. We ended up seeing him for 34, especially noteworthy because of Robert Finney's injury, his foul trouble. So, when you take that, and then you also look at the fact that Cassius Winston, for example, is a great player. He shot 9 for 22 in the game, a lot thanks to Devontae's defense. A guy like Kyle Ahrens, who's a perimeter player, he shot 1 for 4 from the field and didn't do too well. A lot of that was thanks to Devontae's play. And frankly, as I mentioned earlier, depth is so important in this conference. Experience is just as critical. As long as, Green can, avoid suspensions going forward, I guess, he's going to be a massively important player for this team going forward.
Oh, yeah. And especially when he's a junior and we didn't have a junior class against Rutgers. And then suddenly we had a junior class against Michigan State. The turnover, I feel like I was one of the only people that saw it like this. I didn't even see it as much of his fault with the turnover. He probably could have done it differently, but he didn't throw the ball. It got tipped, and then it was just a bad sequence. He was also he should have gotten fouled too. He was thinking he should have gotten fouled, so that was just a lot of, like you said, hair pulling moments. But you mentioned the turnovers, and really, if you take Justin's 1 turnover away and a lot the couple team turnovers, it was just the guards that got turnovers. It was Romeo that got 3, Al that got 3, and Devontae that got 4. So a lot of the guys down low, banging down low, weren't getting any turnovers, which is great to see. And you talked more about Devontae. Of course, we talked the good and the bad, but he's really started to grow into, like Archie said, the offseason, he had a very big development, and I think we're actually seeing it. It's not as big as you might have seen with Juwan going from his sophomore to junior year, but you see the bad Devontae plays going less and less. Some games there's more than others, but there were a lot less bad Devontae plays during Michigan State, which is awesome to see. But speaking of another guard that had a bunch of turnovers and had a couple injuries, the team couldn't have done it without Al Durham. So Matt, what was the kind of play that you saw from Al, especially as he's also starting to grow into his own role more?
Yeah, I think grow is the word I would use for Al. I think we saw him grow up in this game. There has been, again, as I said earlier, there was hints during the losing streak that the losing streak wasn't going to continue. and something was going to come of the losing streak. I think one of those things was how vocal Al Durham was and how vocal he looked on the court. Which, for those of you who don't know anything about basketball, vocal on the court means when the guys go to huddle up under the basket, he's the guy that's coming in talking. You know, he's saying it's okay, it's okay. You know, he's the guy on the bench getting up and clapping and yelling at his teammates when he's on the bench. Al, this whole losing streak was one of the couple people, him and Juwan were one of the two people that were the most vocal, like visibly on the team. And I was waiting for Al. I think Al has actually become a leader on this team and a vocal on-court leader, which is something that we've been missing for quite a while here at the school. You know, he's been a great three-point shooter all year. He wasn't that great last year. He improved over the summer. So maybe shooting can be taught. All those people that say shooting can't be taught. Anyways, he was a knockdown shooter on Friday. He was freaking fantastic. You know, he scored 14 points, had 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Yeah, he had 3 turnovers, but a couple of them were, you know, people kind of knocking it out of his hands, or there was one dumb pass he made. But, you know, you get the good with the bad. There was a lot more assists in this game anyways from everybody. The ball movement was fantastic. People were moving off the ball, something that I complained about after we lost to Rutgers. But, yeah, Al's biggest attribute has always been his defense. He's always been a very good defensive guy. Even last year when he was going through his rough stretch, when he wasn't scoring every game he played, he was still one of our better perimeter defenders. And Al is still one of our better perimeter defenders. And he played 37 minutes, hurt his finger, came back in after probably had it facing the wrong direction and flipped over. And, you know, you saw Tim Garl set it back in. He went in and made plays with probably a broken or dislocated finger. I mean, it was tough. He showed toughness. He showed leadership, and I can't be more proud of, you know, seeing Al grow like right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, and you mentioned the minutes, and his conditioning has just been incredible because he like you said, he went out because of his finger. He still played the second most minutes on the team, 37 minutes. If you take away all of overtime, which he still sat part of out with his finger, that's still 32 minutes, which he played when part of that was an injury. So he would have played easily the most minutes or just under Romeo if he didn't have the injury, and he deserved every minute that he got. I know, Nathan, you wanted to make a comment about that.
Just one nugget, one more of these, just, you know, kind of just dropping them casually here. How about this? Devontae Green and Al Durham, the two guys we just talked about in Big Ten play, are combined 21 for 47 from 3, about 44.7%. I mean, if that continues, IU all of a sudden has that kind of shooting threat that we so desperately were looking for the last month.
Yeah, and those are numbers that of course, last game helped with Al being 3 of 5 and Devontae being 3 of 4, of course. But you mentioned 21 out of 47. What did you say? 21 out of
47.
Out of 47, yeah. And so, like, out of 47, that's still over all of Big Ten play. It's not just this game. The sheer numbers, it probably bumped it up a couple percentages, but still would have been low 40s with those two guys. And those are the guys that we might need to key on. In terms of trying to get that spark of 3-point shooting. And of course, that spark of 3-point shooting could not have come at better times this past game. That was part of the reason IU was able to get in, because what they had been missing so much the past 7 games, right before that, the past 7 games was just another team would go on a run. Part of not being able to take a punch is being able to counter what the other guy was doing. So shooting a 3 and making a 3, stopping their run is just the biggest dagger of all, which is what IU did this past game. And Matt, you were talking about the assists. Man, we're going to talk about Romeo in a second, but Romeo had 4 assists. Al had 3. Deron Davis, which is part of why it's just incredible to see the kind of play that he had last Saturday, had 4 assists. Not only was he banging down low, getting 12 points, being 4 of 8 from field goal, he got 4 assists. And then like we were just talking about with Devontae, 5 assists. So Devontae wasn't just shooting and doing his acrobatic shots and that's all he did. He was playing defense like Matt talked about. He was getting assists. He was doing more than just one specific thing, which is how this game was able to come and just end the way it did. Of course, it helped with a lot of Michigan State's just lack of free throws and stuff. But, you know, everyone talks about that statistic, how IU is in the top 10, top 5 of actually opponent free throw percentage. But maybe we're just that team that everyone's just going to shoot poorly against free throws with. But anyway, yeah, exactly. I'll take it. A player that IU fans have been a little disappointed in the past couple of games has, of course, been Romeo Langford. And I think maybe a lot of it is just really high expectations, seeing that you get a top 5 player, and that top 5 recruit is supposed to be lights out, balls to the wall, 30 points a game every single game, and they're not supposed to take a step back. They're not supposed to struggle ever. You never saw Romeo struggle in high school, but the key word was high school. So, of course, at least to the standards people have put upon him, he hasn't been doing as well. But this past game, 6 for 18, and sometimes you need that volume of shots. You need those 18. Even though 6 of them went in, he still had a volume of shots, and people were keying on him a little more. And some of those, like we said, he was able to kick out because he got a bunch of assists. He got 5 rebounds, which was great, and he still ended up with 19 points, let alone those couple dagger threes that he put in. So, Nathan, what was your kind of reaction from Romeo's game that was kind of, I guess, up and down, if you want to summarize it a little bit?
Yeah, and look, you know, I can put myself in the camp of people that were kind of frustrated with Langford's performance this year. Maybe my expectations were too high, I'm not sure. But for example, I was at the Purdue game when IU was kind of overwhelmed for 40 minutes. I noticed a couple possessions where he wasn't exactly sprinting back on defense. And, you know, watching these other games on TV, I feel like there are times where he may not take the best shots. But I think you made a good point here. Your best players, and I don't think there's any question that Romeo Langford is one of IU's 2 best players. You sometimes have to understand your role within the team. And I think Romeo, when Juwan Morgan went out, sort of had the light bulb flicker over his head, or, you know, in his head. He was like, you know, we may not win this game. And I don't think anyone wearing cream and crimson on Saturday really expected IU to win that game, especially after Morgan went out. But I think Langford's thought process was, look, we may not win, but I'm going to do whatever I can to push us over the top. And okay, he missed a few shots for sure. But if you looked at his start on Saturday, I think he started 2 for 11, maybe even 2 for 12. He finished 4 for 6. And when you think in crunch time, who's the player IU relies on the most? Against Butler was Robert Finney. But here, you know, Langford was a menace on both ends of the court and helped IU win. I love the fact that he had the 5 rebounds, the 4 assists, and the block as well. You know, he's contributing in many different areas. He's become more and more of a pest this season as the year has gone along defensively. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, this guy fills it up. You know, there aren't too many guys in the league that average 17.5 points per game in the Big Ten. Romeo Langford is one of those players. He's doing it in 33 minutes a game. Fortunately, he's been able to avoid the serious injury bug, although he's been banged up here and there this season. And all I'm saying is, if he sees that 3-point percentage rise a little bit, which perhaps could have started on Saturday, you've got a guy who can carry your team in the postseason if IU strings together the wins to get themselves there.
And a statistic that you might have looked over or missed a lot with Romeo, you look at a lot of those players like Rob and Jake that fouled out, but you look at Romeo's fouls and a problem that he and Juwan had just in so many games, basically over half of almost the entire season so far. He only had 2 fouls the entire game, and he played 41 minutes. You want to take away all of overtime, that's still 36 out of 40 minutes that he would have played. He only got 2 fouls, adding that extra 5 minutes, which is something that he's really worked on. He and Archie have worked on just to try and get that dialed back, because, of course, it hurt. You even look at Juwan. We can talk about Juwan in his first 14 minutes of play, really 13 minutes. He had 0 fouls. So we were all talking about just getting our 2 best players out of foul trouble, trying to start the games much better. Juwan still had 5 points in his first just over 10 minutes. Romeo, struggled a little bit, like you talked about, Nathan, but he still scored some. He was still, I think, the first basket or something was still Romeo's, which is what you want to see. The first 2 baskets, I think, were Juwan and Romeo, which is what we were all talking about, what we all wanted, and that was just great to see. You take away the one really bad 3 at the end that Romeo had right before overtime, that the play kind of went away. But otherwise, it was like you said. After his slow start, Romeo was great guy, great contributor, especially in crunch time when IU was looking to go to him a bunch. Let's finish the Michigan State portion of this, Matt. I'm going to head it over to you. So you got. I'm going to let you pick someone that didn't get as much minutes. So you got Evan Fitzner that saw a few minutes, Demezy, and Jake. You saw Cliff technically played for like 5 seconds, but what did you see from either Fitz, Anderson, or Forrester in their limited time that they played?
Jake Forrester is going to be a prospect, and a very good one, in like a year and a half. I'm going to say like halfway through his junior year, he's going to be, it might be a starter for this team. But right now he's a freshman who's a little bit on the how do I put this? A little bit on the less skilled side of the basketball spectrum. I don't think he's as tight with his dribble as he wants to be. I don't think he's got the footwork that is needed to defend at this level in the Big Ten. All of that can be learned. Obviously, all of that can be tweaked. All of that can be, changed. So, but with that being said, his one bucket he had, that one dunk he had, fantastic, and it was a grown man move. He took it, he looked up and went, well, the last 2 shots I've tried to make were both layups, and I missed both of them, so I'm just gonna dunk it. And he went up with 2 hands and put it in the basket and went crazy, as he should. It was a great basket, and it shows me that. Well, it shows me one of 2 things. The first thing, which has nothing to do with Jake, is just that this team should use 2 hands a lot more. That's all I'm saying. Secondly, it shows me that he has the athleticism and the motor to compete at the Big Ten level, which he will eventually. Forget about the fouls. He'll learn how to defend. He'll learn how not to get some stupid ticky-tack reaching in fouls. He'll learn, he has a great mentor in Duron Davis who went through that as a freshman as well. Anyways, moving on to Evan Fitzner. Evan Fitzner finally made a 3. We brought him in to make 3-pointers. Because I didn't know that until about, 17, 18 minutes into the second half when he finally made a 3. It was probably 7 minutes, not 17. But you get my point. He finally made one in the second half with a huge 3. We needed all 3 points to win this game. Thank God he made it. Hopefully it breaks him out of whatever freakish slump he's in. Because he's in a slump. A career 40% 3-point shooter isn't, not making a 3 for a month. So it's nice to have him back, and hopefully he is fully back, because he can change your offense drastically if he's a lot more confident. Have you heard that word before? Confident in the way he shoots 3s. And then I would have liked to see a little bit more of Clifton Moore, but I just don't think the staff trusts him enough on defense. Switching and his rotation on defense. I don't think they trust him enough, and that's why we haven't seen him. A bunch of my friends have come up and asked me, like, why isn't Clifton playing? And it's like, well, on defense he's kind of slow. On offense he gets rebounds, and that's great. And I'd love to put him in for a couple minutes at least during a game. But if he's not going to play, it's because the coaching staff doesn't trust him. But good for him to get out on the court.
Yeah, and Jake wasn't supposed to really play this year. He's had to also play in roles that he wasn't really supposed to. He's not really made to play the college 5 right now just because he's so skinny, and he's worked on that. He said last night he's gained 15 to 20 pounds already, and he still needs to gain about 15 more. He's really working on it. He says he's eating about 7,500 calories a day. He's really trying to get it up. That's actually great. Go listen to his about 10-minute interview with Don Fisher last night. It was really good insight, especially from a guy you don't really get to hear a lot or see a lot. Evan Fitzner, amazing 3. I like what you said about Cliff. He's a conversation topic for literally an entire podcast almost, just because there's a lot to dive into with Cliff, but you have 20 seconds. I'm going to go Nathan first, and then Matt, you got 20 seconds to just wrap up your Michigan State thoughts as we move into Iowa. Nathan, ready, go.
Amazing win. It's just such a sigh of relief that IU finally has ended the skid. But look, Michigan State, by the way, who just lost to Illinois as we're taping this, you're only as good as your first few minutes in your next game. So IU's got to come out against the Hawkeyes, start well, put this game past them, and move on to the back 10, as Archie Miller calls it. Now there's 9 games left.
Matt, ready, go.
It's exactly what I was going to say. You literally stole the words out of my mouth. I raised my hand, and you didn't pick on me, Noah. So I'm upset at you. I raised my hand. You're a teacher. You're supposed to know to pick on me. Anyways, maybe Michigan State is in a little bit of a slump, and we caught them at the right time. I don't care. Illinois just beat them, but it was on the road. You know, it's harder to win on the road than it is to win at home. And so we actually beat Michigan State on the road in a place and environment which we haven't won in a while. So don't let this Illinois win discredit our win, because it's a very good Michigan State team. And this was still a very close game that Illinois played out of their minds to win this game. And hopefully they're not playing this way when we go and visit them in Champaign later this season.
Yeah. The Illinois win against Michigan State, man, we are running close to time. We can't really talk about that because that just makes the Big Ten that much better. And you can just see, man, as bad as IU's been, the Big Ten is in good ways or bad ways a lot of fun this year. So
it makes Illinois look better, and we've already beat them. So
exactly I was gonna say more. I think Michigan State's on a slump now that they just lost to Illinois. I think it says a lot more about Illinois maybe than Michigan State in some ways, because again, Michigan State's before IU, they lost to Purdue and Illinois both on the road. They lost to IU at home, which I'm not taking Illinois beating Michigan State. I'm not taking anything away from IU's victory still as we record this, but we're not going to give too much of a preview just because I think we deserve to talk about some positive things and just how well IU played in a game. So we talked about Matt's memorable monologue already. He's had a couple awesome things to say. So we're just going to go right into the Iowa game that's coming up on Thursday. So a lot of you hearing this usually Wednesday. It's going to come up tomorrow. Hawkeyes this Thursday, 9:00 p.m. in Bloomington. It's going to be on ESPN. We finally get a home game that we can look forward to. Currently, Iowa's ranked number 20 in the AP polls, 22nd in KenPom, and 23rd in Bart Torvik. Hoosiers are 44th in KenPom and 53rd in Bart Torvik. And Bart Torvik has not been as kind for computer rankings to IU through the entire time. I think it's like the mid-20s at their best in the season. But anyway, ESPN gives IU a 56.8% chance to win. KenPom gives IU a 53% chance to win with a score of 76-75 in favor of IU. Torvik is the 100% complete opposite of KenPom. Gives Iowa a 53% chance to win with a score of 76-75. So literally same thing, just kind of coin toss up because Iowa's on a roll right now. IU is just getting out of their losing streak. So in more quick words than a longer story, Nathan, what have been your just scouting reports, and what are we supposed to look for in the Iowa game?
Yeah, I guess, long story short, this team is excellent offensively. They rank in the top 10 in adjusted offensive efficiency in KenPom. That's overall, but they do a lot of interesting things when you look a little bit deeper into the details. They go to the line, they convert a bunch of free throws. I think they make the most free throws per game in the country right now. They also don't foul too much. So, this is going to be, they play at a fast pace. They're a deep team as well. I would recommend that everyone go to indianahq.com and see our contributor, Dakota, his preview of Iowa. It's very in-depth. And to sort of give you a bit of a free sample, it's free if you go to the website also. He says that Iowa has a deep bench. They've got tall guys, but he said, Iowa held Michigan to 0.8 points per possession, and their bench outscored Michigan's bench 24-3. That's the kind of stuff they can do when they're playing at their best. It's going to be a fun game. The Big Ten is full of opportunities. By the way, speaking of Indiana HQ, whoever's listening right now, you or your friends or your family can be the lucky 1,000th Twitter follower. I would highly recommend you guys follow us on Twitter if you want to have that feather in your cap.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe we'll tweet something out and get something. I don't know. Matt, what have you seen, or what are we going to look for? What kind of matchups are we going to see for Iowa?
Yeah, get ready for a bunch of threes. They like to jack up threes, especially
from their side. Yes, not necessarily.
No. Please, I don't want us matching them three pointer because they're a much better 3-point shooting team than we are. So their best player, Tyler Cook, who averages 16 points per game, has attempted 4 3-pointers all year. That, as I said, their best player is their forward, Tyler Cook. He's not going to shoot any 3-pointers, but he's a beast inside, and he's very good at facilitating. He's kind of reminds me of Juwan Morgan if Juwan couldn't shoot threes and was, well, maybe he doesn't remind me of Juwan Morgan. But anyways, Tyler Cook is his own player. He's strange. He's just one of those college players where you look at and you go, he would not make it in the NBA, but something he's good at makes him very good in college. And I don't know exactly what it is, but he's just crafty. And he's gonna score a bunch of points on us, and it's up to us to not put ourselves in foul trouble trying to guard him, because he is a 70%, 68% free throw shooter. I said free throw, but free throw shooter. I say that every time. Free throw shooter. So he's gonna make free throws. So we got to keep him off the line. Joe Wieskamp, Jordan Bohannon, these small little white guys that run around the court and shoot 3-pointers. We need to keep them, close to our vests. We need to keep them, give them no room to breathe, because if we let them get open shots, they're gonna make them. And as we saw in the Michigan game, they made them and destroyed them. So, yeah, if we're not going to pull a Michigan and get completely obliterated by Iowa, we need to play the best 3-point defense we've probably played all year.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say about this game is I think this is really going to put, not like other games haven't put it to the test, but I think this is going to be a huge key game to put the pack line defense for IU and how it's the chemistry of the defense to test. Because if you can slow down Iowa's offense, even just halfway or even a little bit, that gives IU the opportunity, even with an offensive night that might balance out what it did against Michigan State. If you can just slow down the offense of Iowa, they don't have much defense at all. So you're going to be able to get even a little bit of points, even in IU's worst offensive outings. You're still going to be able to score something. So I think the defense is going to be key. That's probably what Archie's starting to talk about a lot. And just the chemistry, just do what you did, have the same attitude against Iowa. The students, I would think, are going to come out no matter what on a Thursday, because with the only 2 home games that they had in January were nothing, basically, because Illinois didn't count since it was during winter break. Michigan, the fans were there. Nebraska, they weren't really there. Michigan, but it was obviously such a bad game. So there's finally some hope. You're going to be able to get the backing of the students in the crowd and just finally be able to stay put in one spot for a while. It's going to be awesome. Let's hope they can continue this. And even if it's a squeaking out a victory, it doesn't matter. It's a W instead of an L on the record sheet. But we only have a couple questions. We're going to go through it real quick. And I think they're a couple really valid questions. Duncan on Twitter said, is there a path for IU victory when the opposing team makes free throws? And that's honestly a valid question, because we talked about that earlier. The opposing teams really don't score a lot of free throws, and if Michigan State made a bunch of free throws, you could argue that it wouldn't have almost been a game last Saturday. But Nathan, is there a path to IU victory when opposing teams make free throws?
Yeah, I mean, sure there is. Michigan State, they didn't hit their free throws on Saturday, no question. But it's not like IU was hitting every shot they took either. IU, for example, shot. IU missed 44 field goals against Michigan State. It happens. You turned it over a few times. Look, as far as the Big Ten goes, these teams are so evenly matched that you're gonna have to. Sounds simple and it sounds stupid. You gotta hit your field goal. You gotta make baskets. You gotta hit your field goals and make your free throws.
Yeah, Exactly. Matt, another question from Duncan. It's kind of a more fun one. What should I wager with my Hawkeye coworker this Thursday?
I wouldn't wager anything, but yeah, no, don't do that. I'm confident about this game, but at the same time, I don't want to jinx it, so I'm not going to say anything.
Maybe just jersey swap just in case.
Yes.
Just in case, yeah.
Yes.
All right. To close it out, we're going to do more of just the answer, a little less why, but Frame by Froops on Twitter, you can add one former player to the current roster to close out this season. And I'm just going to do the player, not as much the why, because we could have a very long conversation about this. Who do you pick and why? I'll give Nathan and Matt just a tiny second to think about it. I'm going to have a very vague answer, just someone that can make threes. Take anyone from any decade, from any point that you want, even if it's last year, and you can go, or a couple years with Rob, or 2 years ago with James Blackman Jr., or 30 years ago. Anyone that can make a three-pointer, even if they can't play as much defense, just to make some stuff. And that's who I'm going to pick. Matt, who do you pick in small Y?
Either Isaiah Thomas or Eric Gordon, one of the two, or Victor Oladipo, one of the three. I don't care. Just imagine them playing with Romeo and Juwan. Just, yeah.
That's vague, but I love it because, yeah, just imagine it. And that's honestly, your mind wanders for you. So that's a great answer. Nathan, what about you?
Jordan Hulls would be my guy. I think he would be lights out on this team.
Of all the players you could have picked, and like the 100-year history of IU basketball, you picked Jordan Hulls. No offense, but you picked Jordan Hulls.
Look, he brings the shooting. He knows what it means to play for Indiana. I think he would be an experienced guy also. I feel like he would be an important and critical contributor to this group.
Yeah,
over Albert Chaney, over Walt Bellamy. Okay.
Well, that's what I mean. This could get a little not ridiculous. It could get a little weird with just because you obviously have so many players to talk about. But I guess I thought of it. I don't want to take anything away from Juwan and Romeo. So how could I add someone to accent this with that kind of thing? And I liked Nathan's with Jordan to accent that kind of thing because honestly, that'd be incredible accent. You still get Romeo to do that kind of stuff. You still get Juwan that can edit. You still have your big guys if Duran's healthy. You add that shooting. It kind of went into what I said, and that's great. But then you have Matt's point.
This has turned into a long explanation.
Yeah, that's what I was trying. I'm like, I don't want to go too long because we could talk for multiple minutes about it. But imagine.
It's a great question, though.
It is a great question.
It is a great question.
Yeah, especially after we had some positive stuff. We don't have to think, man, who can turn this team around right now? But that about wraps it up for our 74th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. I will personally be back this Friday for another edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. Thank you to our live audience, of course, as always, for coming out and participating in the chat. We love you guys. If you want to participate, 8:30 p.m. Tuesday evenings, come on YouTube. It's great. Make sure to stay tuned through updates on Twitter at The Hoosier Sound. Subscribe to us on YouTube or however you listen to podcasts. And visit our website, indianahq.com, so you can get all that information in one place. As always, send us your questions to the audience because, of course, wrap the show up with questions just from you guys. So comment, chat, send us a message at admin@indianahq.com. Whatever you have, we'll get them on our next episode. Lastly, if you enjoy the show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really, really does help grow our podcast. We say it every week, but we really do mean it. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.